welcome back. Chapter 20. Brittany left for a 3-day stay in New Orleans with Gil and Vanessa the week after school let out. Mom, it's fun here, Brittany said when she called from the hotel. There are people juggling and making like statues in the street, and some people wear crazy outfits. We saw one man dressed in a purple coat trimmed with white and black fur and these thick sole white boots. And a huge afro too, I'll bet. How did you know? Just a hunch. The man Brittany saw obviously enjoyed dressing in the 70s styles. Tell me about your hotel. Vanessa and I have our own room and bathroom upstairs. Mr. Gill's room is downstairs. We have our own bathroom up here too. Have you eaten? Did we? Mr. Gill brought us to a deli where the sandwiches are as long as my whole arm. Tomorrow he's going to bring us to see a real live plantation outside of the city. You'll probably learn a lot about our people's history. Is Mr. Gill there? I'd like to talk to him for a minute. Sure, Mom. I'll call you tomorrow. Dana heard the thumping sound as Brittany descended the stairs to Gil's quarters. A moment later, Gil's cheerful voice touched her ear. Hi, Dana. Hi, I hear the girls are having a good time. Yeah, we walked across the French quarters and ate at Johnny's Po' Boys. They got a kick out of some of the sights. I'm sure they did. Brittany described someone who sounded like a pimp. She couldn't keep the concern out of her voice. Yeah, well, you find all kinds of folks in the quarters. You've been here, you know that. But don't worry, Dana. I gave them the lecture about not laughing or staring at people, and no one will approach them with me around. We're in a nice hotel. Yes, I know. Dana had visited the hotel website when Gil gave her the name of the place he chose. I'm going to go over to Harrah's and hit the blackjack table in about an hour, but I'll be back before dark. The girls have plenty to eat. They could only eat half of their po' boys at lunch, so they brought the other half back with them. They picked up some dessert at Johnny's as well, and of course they couldn't eat it, so they doggy bagged that as well. Do you think they'll be okay there by themselves? Of course, Dana. If I didn't, I'd never leave them. Vanessa will call my cell phone if she needs me for anything. Stop worrying, will you? He said good-naturedly. It's just that Brittany is all I have left, Gil. If anything happened to her, I couldn't bear it. For a moment, silence filled the air. I hope I didn't sound insensitive, Gil said, but I hope you understand that I love my daughter as much as you love yours. Dana felt about as big as a pin. Now I feel stupid. That wasn't my intention, Dana. I know. Tell you what. I'll call you when I get back to the room. Would that make you feel better? Yes, it will. All right then. You'll hear from me in a few hours. Oh, I'm so happy to see you, Dana exclaimed, pulling Brittany into a tight embrace. I missed you so much. Gee, Mom, I was only gone for 3 days. What are you going to do when I go to Nassau? Brittany traditionally spent a month with her grandparents and uncle. I'll be all right. Dana tore herself away, not wanting Brittany to feel smothered. She waved to Vanessa, who sat in the front seat of Gil's Murano, and then turned to Gil, who had gotten out from behind the driver's seat and retrieved Brittany's small suitcase from the trunk. Back safe and sound, he said pleasantly. Then speaking to Vanessa, he said, you can stay there. I'm just going to carry this in and I'll be right out. He fell into step beside Dana. Safe and sound, thanks to you, Gil, she said. You're right. I shouldn't have worried. Next time, I'll know better. Maybe next time you'll come along. They smiled at each other, and suddenly Dana felt something other than a friendly bond between two single parents. Gil was looking at her in a way he never had before. She knew that look. The look a man gives a woman he's interested in. Her tongue suddenly expanded in her mouth, making it hard to talk. Well, maybe. she managed to say. Gil put Brittany's bag down. I better get Vanessa home. I'm sure her mother is anxious. Thanks again for bringing Brittany along, Gil. Sure, I'll be talking to you, okay? Okay. She shut the door the moment he stepped outside. Her heart was beating fast enough to power a jet. Had she imagined it, or had Gil just flirted with her? And what had he meant by saying he would be talking to her? She already had a relationship with an inappropriate man that ended badly. She didn't want to do it again. Fantasizing about Gil as a man both desired and unattainable was one thing. Acting on her fantasy by getting involved with him was something else. Of course, the possibility always existed that she just imagined the way he looked at her. She hoped so. Because if she hadn't, she could very easily find herself in the middle of a situation she didn't have the faintest idea to handle. That's the end of chapter 20. Chapter 21. The new work week began on a high point. Through CDN's ad on the internet, Norrell had found 2 new transcriptionists who would be working full-time. One lived in South Carolina, the other in Texas. Norrell spent the morning on a conference call training them on the software and the formatting of the accounts they would be working on. By Thursday, Norrell found herself wishing it was Saturday. She was exhausted. Even with 2 new people, their workload remained heavy, and there were other distractions. Paying the household bill had always been Norrell's responsibility, but being so busy, she could barely keep up with getting dinner on the table. She bought a pair of shoes on sale at Dillard's last month and had forgotten to mail in her check because the bill was due today. She had to drive over to the mall or be slapped with a late fee that would be more than the cost of her purchase. While she was there, she thought maybe she could pick up a little something for Dana. This wasn't a good time for her friend, who faced a dual blow of her first anniversary of Kennedy's accident and Father's Day. Then there was that mysterious business with Sean. She didn't know what was going on with that. Dana announced without elaboration and in a tone that suggested she didn't wish to discuss the matter further, that she would no longer be seeing him. Norrell had asked Cece about it, and she hadn't known anything either. Maybe he reconciled with his wife or something. At any rate, Norrell agreed with Cece's statement that whatever happened, Dana was better off without him. Under these circumstances, Norrell felt Dana warranted some special attention, no matter how busy she was. Still, these errands were taking time away from her already busy schedule. Vic wouldn't be happy with how late she would have to work tonight. She'd make it up to him by suggesting they meet downtown for dinner tomorrow. Since it was Friday, she would have the entire weekend to get the work completed before it came due on Monday. She turned into the mall entrance, continuing to drive until she was near her destination. The mall had just opened for business a half hour ago and wasn't crowded. She started to pull into a space right past the one reserved for persons with disability when she noticed a small white sign at the foot of the space. Norrell squinted. She didn't know if it was her imagination, but her vision didn't seem as sharp as it used to be. Probably all those hours in front of the computer screen. Maybe this was a special space for Employee of the Month or something. To her amazement, when she focused on the sign, it read, "Parking for Expected Mothers." She sucked her teeth and drove on. That was the stupidest thing she'd seen in a long time. Parking for expected mothers. Why not park for tall people or for short people, fat people, skinny people, good-looking people, ugly people? It seemed to Norrell that plenty of other people could use a parking space this close to the mall entrance. Elderly people, for example. Plenty of senior citizens had difficulty walking, but not necessarily to the extent where they qualify for handicap parking. My goodness, if every old person in Florida needed a handicap parking spot, there wouldn't be anything left for the rest of the population. And what about the woman struggling with several small children, particularly particularly if one was an infant. Surely she would benefit from having a space closer to interest. It would reduce the amount of time needed to escort children through the traffic, since drivers often seem to think they were on a highway instead of in a parking lot. She was tempted to park there any damn way, but in the end drove a few spaces down to an empty spot. Why this ridiculous admiration of women who were mothers? It almost bordered on worship. It was a club of which she'd never be a member. She'd have to get used to it. The sight of someone actually using a payphone triggered the thought that her phone bill was due. She'd have to pay it online as soon as she got home. Each month it got harder and harder to keep up with her household while satisfying the demands of her business. She was going to have to take some time away from CDN to get her bills in order. Maybe arrange to have them paid by automatic bank draft. Vic would have a fit if the phone or lights got cut off because she'd forgotten to pay the bill. She glanced at her watch. She still had to go to Office Max and pick up a new toner for her printer. She had to print out the payroll checks and statements today. She really had to hustle if she planned to surprise Vic with dinner. He'd been so grumpy lately. She tried to make it an extra effort to please him. She planned to make his favorite, linguine with white clam sauce tonight. She was back home, rewarding herself with a cigarette after installing the toner while the paychecks printed when Dana called. "Can you help me with a sports medicine clinic, Norrell? I can't do this all by myself, and Cece's not working today because of the funeral." Cece's aunt had died a few days before in South Florida, so she, her daughters, and her sister Mitchie had driven down to attend the services. "Yes, I just finished the payroll. I'm going to start transcribing in a little bit and work well into the evening. Don't worry, we'll get it done." Norrell hated transcribing for that account. She found all those sprained wrists and ankles and torn ligaments boring, but she had a financial stake in keeping the clients happy, so she'd force herself. She supposed hearing about muscles and joints pains for a few hours was better than working with her absolute least favorite obstetrician. "How's Cece doing?" she asked. That's no picnic driving all the way down to West Palm and then back again." "At least she has her sister with her to help with the driving." After the incident with Sean, Dana didn't like mentioning Mitchie by name. "I told her to take it easy. She wouldn't want to bring on a miscarriage." It was Dana who accidentally spilled the beans. "Miscarriage? Cece's pregnant?" Dana didn't answer right away, and Norrell had a feeling she was laminating having let what obviously had been a secret slip out. "How can that be?" she pressed. "She had a tubal ligation, remember?" "Norrell, how many times have you transcribed the doctor saying that the patients were informed of odds of failure?" "Yes, but I've never heard of it actually happening." "Wait a minute. They also say there's a possibility of ectopic." She had a test. "The fetus is in the uterus, where it belongs." Norrell recognized the hard edge in Dana's voice. "I know what you're thinking, Dana. You think I'm such a monster, and maybe I am. But I went through so much and have nothing to show for it, and she got a house full of kids. She gets everything while I have nothing." "Norrell, there's no excuse for wishing a tubal pregnancy on Cece. Besides, you're exaggerating. You have a husband who loves you, a beautiful home, money in the bank, and you're healthy. Cece got all those things you mentioned except the beautiful home, and since she said they're looking, she'll soon have that too. And she has much more." Norrell took a deep breath. Everyone doesn't get a happy ending, she reminded herself. "I don't really wish anything bad for Cece or her baby, and I know it's not up to her to decide who gets what out of life, but with her having so many babies, you'd think I'd be able to have just one." "In an ideal world, you would be." A few tears of frustration had escaped from Norrell's eyes as she talked, but suddenly she remembered that sign at the mall parking lot. She pictured Cece pulling her van into that space and getting out. And suddenly, Norrell began crying openly in great sobs that left her gasping for air. "I'm sorry," she said when she caught her breath. "Norrell, I wish I was there. I wish there was something I could do." "It's all right. It's just such a shock. I'll get over it." Her tears subsided and she chuckled, or tried to. It came out sounding more like a sniffle. "I can hear Cece going on and on now. I swear that girl talks about her kids more than Kathleen Lee Gifford used to when she was on TV. Are you sure you're going to be all right? I feel terrible spilling it like that." "I promised Cece I wouldn't say anything. Maybe she won't be too upset with me since I know she's dreading telling you. You've been very brave, doing so much for CDN and everything, but I can imagine how devastating this whole experience has been for you. It's hard trying to get used to. Sometimes I can go to the mall like I did this morning and look right through all those toddlers and strollers and those adorable display windows at Baby Gap, and then other times it gets me down, like it did when we used to go on Saturday afternoons. Even back then I had a feeling I might have a problem conceiving because of what my doctor told me years ago." On the other end of the line, Dana nodded. Before Kenny's accident, she and Norrell used to hit the mall just about every weekend, walking up and down the shop line perimeter for exercise and then canceling it out by picking out on ice cream, sodas, and foot-long hot dogs at A&W. "You canceled on me a couple of times. I remember bringing Brittany and sometimes her friend Vanessa too, just to have someone to walk around with." "You could have called Cece," Norrell said sweetly. Dana knew Norrell was trying to be funny at Cece's expense, but at least she wasn't crying anymore. "Come now, Norrell. You know Cece is too busy hunting down bargains at garage sales or out at the Price Club buying margarine tubs and cereal boxes the size of Delaware to go to the mall." They giggled. "Anyway, then Kenny had his accident," Norrell said, "and you couldn't afford to go shopping. And I was glad not to have to go to the mall, but Cece was still a problem. I found it too depressing to be around her and listening to her talk about her family." All Dana's warm feelings for her friend's situation evaporated like spilled water on a hot street. "You make it sound like my husband's death was an ideal excuse not to have to go to the mall with me," she said coldly. "Oh no, Dana, it's not that way," Norrell objected. "You know how devastated I was when Kenny died? That was just poor phrasing on my part. I'm sorry." Dana sighed. Norrell had been her rock in those dark days following Kenny's death. She had been so distraught that even now the memories were still fuzzy, but she knew Norrell and Vic provided invaluable assistance. She didn't know how she would have managed without them. "All right," she said. "I guess you're not expressing yourself all that well because you're upset. But you have to realize that Cece talks about her family because that's what's most important to her. It's not like she doesn't have any other interests in life, but I suppose everything does revolve around Michael and the kids. I know it's not right for me to take out my frustration on her," Norrell said deeply. "I'm going to call her when she gets back and tell her I'm happy for her. And it's not just lip service, Dana. I really mean it." That's the end of chapter 21. Woo. I can understand why Norrell feel that way because she wanted a baby so bad. But she got to work on her feelings when other people are pregnant and can have kids. Will she ever get used to it? I don't know. She can always adopt, but I guess maybe that'll be an option. Maybe it will be. But yeah, It's really not much to say about these 2 chapters. It was blah, 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 and blah. Like I said, I'm going to read to chapter 25. And if it's not living up to the title, Nothing But Trouble, then it's going to go away because it's causing me trouble. All right, then. Well, that's all I have. I don't have anything else to say, so I'm going to just see you in chapter 22. Bye.